Hey everybody, remember we talked about it? We're doing it. Bubbles and brisket.
Join us Saturday, June 26th in Cary at V Pizza, because now we get to be in public together.
There's going to be a bunch of pitmasters and chefs preparing all different types of brisket for you. There'll be at least 18 different sparkling wines and champagne for you to try. It is going to be one heck of a party.
With help from our friends at Raleigh Magazine, Triangle Wine Company, and Butcher's Market, we finally get to get out in public and enjoy ourselves. And why not? Let's get outside, a little bubbly, and put it with what we all genuinely love, delicious brisket.
To get tickets, you go to ncfbpodcast.com. That's our website if you didn't know. Bubbles and Brisket is going to happen on June 26th from 2 to 6 at
V Pizza in Cary, North Carolina. Sponsored in part by Raleigh Magazine, The Butcher's Market, Triangle Wine Company, and brought to you by the NCF&B Podcast.
You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss, and today I am burying the lead. That's right. Now, why I start off this way is because, I usually feel like one of the, strongly educated guys in the room. I feel like, I can stand behind my education.
You
and
think
where
you're smarter than me? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm not saying smarter. I'm saying educated. Okay? Mm-hmm. But the
breaking format right now.
Breaking format. The guy who's here today, quite frankly, he has 2 master's degrees, and one of them is from Harvard University. So I'm intimidated. I'm intellectually intimidated.
Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Yeah. So who we have in today, we are talking local bourbon, North Carolina bourbon, and we are talking that with the master blender and distiller of Old Raleigh Distillery, one Mr. Brandon McCraney.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you in studio. Life is back to normal. The bees are buzzing. The birds are chirping.
Seriously.
Masks are flying. Everything's happening.
Hallelujah.
And the whiskey's pouring.
Yeah.
That is, I love it. We're talking about Old Raleigh Distilling, but it's brand new.
Brand new.
And it's not in Raleigh.
Yeah. In the burbs, yes, in Zebulon.
Exactly. It's a greater Raleigh area.
It's pretty great, because that's Zebulon is getting out there.
Yeah, but let's distill the myth right there. I mean, I'm sure, Brandon, you're going to say this. It's less than a 30-minute drive, which I think, I mean, that's kind of like I think a northeastern perspective. Like, it takes you 30 minutes to get anywhere. I mean, in LA, it takes at least 20 minutes. That's the old joke from Dan Hedaya and Clueless. Anywhere in Los Angeles takes 20 minutes to get to. So I know you're at least 20 minutes away.
And that's totally incorrect in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It takes about 2 hours to get everywhere in there. But anyhow, Zebulon.
Yes, Zebulon.
So you're going outside, you're going east, southeast of Raleigh. You kind of go past Clayton. You go
Wendell,
Nightdale off 64.
Yeah, and then you're in Zebulon.
That's it.
You're going to be out there.
Yeah, Clayton and Nightdale. And actually, because you are alluding to Crafton, that actually has a lot to do with the connection that was made here with Brandon and Old Raleigh Distilling. Because my business partner, Kip Downer, is our connection, like our mutual friend.
Yes.
I don't even know how you guys know each other, so maybe you could explain, not to bore the listeners of like how you know another guy, but
sure.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so Kip owns Burn Boot Camp or a couple of gyms, and my wife goes to Burn. So I guess his wife and my wife connected, and then through association we connected, and we saw him this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm sure Kip meets a lot of like wives' husbands, but they don't all make whiskey. So when he heard like, oh yeah, by the way, my husband is opening up a distillery, his ears probably perked up and said, oh yes, let's be friends.
I think we've got some common likes, to say the least. Yeah.
I won't go down deep into the Kip Downer story, but there is a funny anecdote that came from our first experience going to your distillery when you first opened, which was 2 months ago, 3 months ago,
somewhere around there. Yeah.
And you still, I've yet to try your whiskey. It's looking at me right in the face right now. But your place is actually a bar and a distillery. And so when you were first open solely as a bar. And it was just kind of saying, okay, we got our liquor license. We're allowing people to come in. I'm sure the community was really happy that there was a new place available. So you opened the doors and let everyone come in. So Kip and his wife and me and my wife, we all went out there to check the place out. This is a little insight into Kip. It's a pretty cool story. You had a food truck out front, and the food truck was getting inundated with tons of orders, huge line, and we get in there and we're like, oh man, we want some of that food. That would be great too. And we go back out there. They ran out of gas, and the food truck just shut down. And the poor guy doing it, he's a dad. He had like a younger kid. I think it was his older son, probably like a young teenager of some sort, are working behind the line. And the guy just looks at me. He's like, I'm really sorry, man, but we got to shut down a little early because we ran out of gas. And I got to figure out now my next move because I can't move this truck. I have no gas. And Kip's like, so the only difference between us eating and you shutting down is the gas. He's like, yeah. And he's like, and you have that tank right in your hand? He's like, yeah, he had a little portable tank. He's like, I'll be right back. And he just took the tank, drove down to a gas station, filled it up, came back, and filled up the guy's gas tank. Of course, the guy, the owner of the food truck, was like more than happy that this guy did this. So guess who got free food that night? But I think it made sense because then he was able to turn the lights back on, open it. And I looked at Kip and I went, man, that's why you and I are working together. You are a problem solver. And good dude in general.
I thought you were going to say he siphoned it out of his own car and be like, here you
go. yeah. That's how the story will evolve. That will be my hyperbolic version of it. Right. Yeah, thank you. So we had a great experience there. I believe your wife was tending bar back there. Is that right?
That weekend, yeah. It was,
that weekend.
That was chaos that weekend.
She was making great cocktails. And you had, like, as just a liquor bar, it was really fun. I was like, oh, this is a really cool bar in this area. So, like, if that's all you did, job done. But you've got a whole lot.
You went and you didn't try the whiskey?
The whiskey was not available?
It wasn't available yet.
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
So we did, as part of our business model, we're trying to, you mentioned Zebulon, and one of the reasons we're there is we're trying to be part of a revitalization effort for that town.
Yeah.
And so, as such, we stood up the bar. It's actually technically not a bar, it's a tasting room for a distillery, of which we offer everything. And that weekend that Max and Kip showed up, that was actually our opening weekend. It was a soft opening weekend. And we didn't know, quite frankly, because of COVID, if anybody was going to show up. You know, one, we're in Zebulon, but two, with COVID and social distancing, I just had no idea.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, there was a humongous interest in that weekend and the following weekend. And so as such, my wife, who's not a trained bartender, gets behind the bar and she starts grinding out cocktails, which, thank goodness. But it was a pleasant surprise. We felt very blessed that weekend, and we immediately started hiring staff.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, there you go.
You know, before we get into tasting the whiskey, we got to taste a little bit of this coffee
first.
Yeah, you've got right in front of you a little bit of Joe Van Gogh coffee, one of our brand new sponsors of the show. We were Chemexing this coffee today, and it is delicious. What are we drinking?
And you know what, Max? The third time is the charm. Like, it's gotten good. It's been really good every time, but this is like, I feel like you nailed it this time.
Yeah, I'm a coffee guru now.
You're a Chemex chemist. So we are tasting their special blend that was just released on May 20th, From the Mountains to the Sea.
I don't even know what song that is.
I know. I'm not. You're the singer in here, but that's the thank you song, Led Zeppelin. You know.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Only you and me.
Oh, interesting, because I'm going to California day after tomorrow.
Oh, okay. But yeah, this is the Mountains to the Sea blend, and it is just shows off all these beautiful flavors that stretch along this 170. Sorry. 1,175 miles from the Great Smoky Mountains to the Outer Banks. And they launched this blend in 2017, and they've released it every summer since. And it's got these notes of candied apple, milk chocolate, and as you said previously, this hint of lemonade, which just makes it so cool and delicious and round and creamy. It's delicious.
It reminds me of a drink. This is a free one for everybody. I'm giving you a freebie, free recipe, a Thunderbolt, which everybody at the old Y Hill and at the Standard Foods and at the Midtown Grill, all the places I worked before, have all, like, I convinced everyone to get into it. Now, I didn't create it. It's a well-known, somewhat known coffee beverage, but coffee as strong and rich as you can get, and fresh squeezed lemonade. You just put those two together and you drink it cold on ice. It's amazing. And you don't think you'd like it, but I mean, it's not too different than, say, an Arnold Palmer, just iced tea and lemonade. But the coffee lemonade is tremendous. And this,
bitter and sweet.
Yeah, this has that like citrus kind of feel in it already, and you're like, oh, okay. So I bet you could also throw a little lemonade in this, and it would just be spectacular.
Especially for the thumber.
The thumber. Thumbers are great. Is that like a hitchhiking term?
Thumber Thunderbolt.
Are you going to Barcelona later? Anyhow.
But Joe Van Gogh.
And Brandon, you were just grabbing that bag in your hand. That's yours. You're taking that home as a guest of the show.
Thank you.
Joe Van Gogh has graciously sponsored not only our podcast to drink delicious coffee, but also for our guests to take some coffee home and enjoy it the way it should be enjoyed. So that is for you. Go check out joevangogh.com or check out any of their locations. They have 7 locations all around the Triangle, from all the way up in Hillsborough to Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh. You can find it. So joevangogh.com. Now, let's get into this whiskey. Should we start drinking whiskey?
I've been smelling it. I've been looking at it. This cool branded glass. And by the way, if the whiskey's terrible, we're just going to end the podcast now because there's just no point in talking about it anymore. No. But okay, so before we get into it, so your big thing is you're trying to use heirloom grains. That are somewhat local, but there is some other states that are blended in here, correct? Wyoming, Colorado, Tennessee, Indiana.
So the heirloom corn that we'll be using is for our bourbon that we'll be laying down at the distillery.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do...
And is that heirloom corn coming from North Carolina?
Predominantly, yes.
Okay.
With the goal being, as we identify what heirloom grains we're going to fine-tune in our mash bill, we reach out to the local farming community. So then, and we're just... macro perspective, we are on the tail end of old tobacco country.
Yeah.
Zebulon is. Mm-hmm. A lot of 5th, 6th generation farmers, tobacco, they're trying to diversify off that crop. And so what we're trying to do is introduce heirloom corn grains to that area. But as we scale as a brand, the farming community scales too, and we have a unique bourbon unlike any other in the world.
Brandon, we can continue this conversation.
Yeah,
that
the podcast is going to go a little long now.
Delicious bourbon.
It's like really good.
Yeah, it's got this beautiful, like almost light and floral aromatics, but then you taste it. It's not like super heavy on your palate, but then there's this end of spice and a long finish.
Yeah, I got all the caramel, vanilla notes on the top, like you would hope to get. But then, yeah, as it opens up, I get like chai tea, kind of like almost like Indian spices kind of coming through. Not curry.
Not curry. We don't know what curry is.
But like you get like that blend. Just I don't know why chai seemed to kind of fit right in there. I think I'd just like to dump this in some chai coffee or something like that, and not, no one's the wiser.
I think I'd just like to drink it on its own.
Yeah. No, this is really great, and it's been a long time coming that I wanted to try this, and it's funny, you call yourself the Old Raleigh Distillery with the E at the end of old, which I appreciate. That indicates it's even older. But it has a classic feel. This does not taste like a whiskey that was just made. I mean,
thank you.
This is fantastic. So let's get into it. Let's get into your process. I mean, you don't just go to Harvard and then decide to start making whiskey.
No.
Like he went to Harvard.
I know. My God.
Which I rarely talk about either, by the way.
Well, talk about that. I mean, it colors the whiskey. So, how did, because you already had you went to NC State for undergrad, you go to University of Cincinnati.
Well, I was in the Airforce. Yeah.
You were in the Air Force.
So I was ROTC at State.
Okay.
And then commissioned, got stationed in Ohio. And while we were up there, they had a program with UC, University of Cincinnati, where you can get your MBA while you're up there. So took advantage of that, and then got out a little over 4 years in the Air Force, got out as a captain. And I knew at that point it was either, well, make a career out of it or, chase your other ambitions. So at that time I had that corporate ambition to go up the ladder and, try to be the VP or that big exec title, and moved up to New England, the greater Boston area. And got involved in like green energy, sustainability, things such as that. And that field I was in just happened to be Harvard also offered a program that really complemented it well. So got a master's degree in parallel while I continue to do business development and grow a team up there.
What was the master's degree in from Harvard?
Sustainability and environmental management.
Nice. So is that incorporated today in the distillery in any way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so whether it's from the processes to being mindful of how we're sustaining our grains or procuring our grains, but also we've got solar panels on the roof.
Nice.
And quite frankly, it's not about advertising green. It's just trying to be smart as a businessman.
Yeah, because in the long run, it saves you money.
Yeah, and setting the example. So
it's better for your community also.
Yeah. So I don't really, again, talk about things much. I'm at the point in my life where I just like to take action and then take a look at what I'm doing. And if you feel like that's the right direction, maybe a little inspired by it, great. And if not, I'm going to keep doing me because I like the venture that I'm on, the path we're on, and we're completely family owned. So we're going to keep on just doing it our way.
I love it.
I mean, damn. Yeah.
So, okay, so you obviously had some affinity or some love for whiskey at some point in your life. Was there a connection to family or anything? What helped kind of inspire the idea that you wanted to start making whiskey?
Yeah, I don't have any long story family lineage or some secret recipe or some long-lost relative. It's none of that. As a matter of fact, I'm the antithesis of that. We really didn't have alcohol in my house growing up at all. My great-great-grandmother crusaded around the state, going to schools, lecturing about the evils of alcohol, and that's some of my mother's earliest memories. So that was kind of instilled in our household, and actually even to this day, my father, who is 64, he still drinks his Busch Lights in a coffee mug with a lid on it in his shed. Yeah.
Can't break old habits.
And like that's where God can't see.
I'm like, Dad, you're 60, you're old enough to be able to enjoy this your own. And he'll come to our house. Same thing. I've tried bringing him some craft beers, local craft brews around here. And I'll put it in the fridge. Dad, if you just want to sneak out in the garage, feel free. I'm not telling anybody. Nope, he's got an igloo cooler in his truck. He's got his Busch Lights. He does it his way, and
this is where the Beatles song comes in with new lyrics like, "Will you still be drinking Busch in the summertime?
When
Door
60.
closed, lid on in your shed." I'm just kidding. No one gets that. It's when I'm 64. But
we got it.
You got it. Okay. Yeah.
So yes, there was nothing like embedded in my DNA or through osmosis I was going to be a distiller. And what I tell folks is, I fell in love with bourbon before I fell in love with blending and distilling.
Sure.
So I spent time developing that palate, getting educated in the field, falling in love with the art of it all. And then I started hosting events and classes and workshops and getting some certifications. And it wasn't until 2017, January 2017, is when I decided I want to do this venture. And at that time, I was naive enough to think, I left Louisville, distilled there, came back, and I was naive enough to think, well, I'll put in my notice, and in 90 days, I'll get this distillery off the ground, and we're going to be the next great thing since sliced
Hold
bread.
on. Put in your notice where? Because we skipped a chunk. You were in Boston, and now you're in Louisville.
Yeah, so I was in Boston, and I took my previous job, took a position where they asked me to help grow a new technical division in the Southeast and live wherever you'd like, and I started dating my wife when we finished up at NC State. So we always knew we wanted to come back to Raleigh. It was just a question of when, and then this opportunity came up. So they said, look, finish your degree, come down when it's convenient for you, live wherever you want, as long as it's in a near major airport in the Southeast. So that's what brought us down to Raleigh, and that was in the end of 2012.
Okay.
So did that corporate career for a few years, and again, at the time, I didn't know a distillery is what I wanted to do. I can say at that time, though, I was always jealous or envious of that person in college or in high school that just knew that's what they wanted, right? Like,
Yes.
I want to be the heart surgeon. I want to be the dentist. I want to be that third grade teacher. And I
wasted so much fucking time in my 20s, man.
Well, podcasting hadn't existed, so there was no way you would have known that this is what your life would become.
Yeah.
Sadly.
But on the flip side of that coin, perhaps all those experiences, accumulated themselves, and is why you're able to do what you're doing today. Or at least that's how I'd like to think about it.
I mean, I'd like to think about that, but there's a lot of fucking wasted time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a good 15 years.
Yeah. I could have compressed that into like maybe 1-2 years, you know, and been totally had those experiences. But anyway.
So, but you said Louisville.
So we were in Raleigh, and Louisville offers a program. It's called Moonshine University, where you can learn soup to nuts about the industry. So it wasn't just distilling. It was the good, the bad, and the ugly. And at that point, professionally, I'd helped start this division. We scaled it, and we were kind of in maintenance mode, I'd call it. We weren't in growth mode, which, as I discovered in the process, was I like the challenge of creating something and scaling it. So that's what I enjoyed about that previous position. But also, I'd got the opportunity at the tail end of that to basically be the interim VP for the position that I always thought I wanted. And then
within your corporate structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Can you share what company that was? Or is that like you have a non-disclosure?
No, Sodexo.
Okay. That's
So,
pharmaceuticals or biotech?
Predominantly food services, but
food
they
service.
do, I believe they say quality of life services. I was in their technical services division where they do facilities, custodial, construction.
Okay.
And so this was a few years before I had resigned. I'd asked to be this interim position, and I determined pretty quickly, I was like, this is just an empty check the box for me. Like, this, what I thought that I was striving for, what is this? And as it turns out, by the good graces of a greater power, I didn't get the position. Somebody else, much more qualified than I did, perfect fit, but it was actually a blessing because all of this kind of was coming together, this perfect storm of, I decided this is what I'd been chasing, wasn't what was going to make me happy. 2, I didn't get the position. The right person got the position. And at the time, I didn't want to be offered the position. And then 3, over a bottle of wine after Christmas, I had talked to my wife and I'd said, I think I'd like to start a distillery. And I said it specifically with thinking that she was going to say, Brandon, fuck, enough. Like, just put your damn head down, make some money, and chill out for a while.
Yeah.
And she didn't. I distinctly remember this. She took a step back and she said, well, actually, a step back, a sip of her wine, and she said, she goes, I think you'd be great at that. And here's why. And she laid off 2 or 3 reasons. And
Matt and I don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah, I don't. Wait,
but we also didn't go to Harvard. So
that's true.
Come on.
So, well, that's how the distillery came about. Yeah.
So let me get this straight. Your wife steps untrained behind the bar, steps behind the bar when she sees a very busy bar out of the good graces. And you had an idea that was out of left field, and she said, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't like bourbon wasn't in our life. I was, at that time, doing events and educational classes and things like that. And then I said, look, I found this thing in Louisville where I could learn soup to nuts. So I tend to, if I'm going to do something, go all in, let me uncover all the facts, and then figure out and assess if this is the route I want to go. So it just coincidentally, 3.5 weeks later, they happened to have this thing in Louisville.
How long was that educational process in Louisville?
I think a 6-day class.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a huge life commitment to do that.
No, enough for me to just take a week's vacation, said I'd need a break.
Yeah.
And by the time I came back, actually it was the 3rd day into that in Louisville that I said, this is it. This is it. Yeah. So that was January 2017. And then it was 4 arduous years
until
to
we're
get
here.
to
Of scaling. When you were telling this story, I immediately thought, oh, I want to know what was the bourbon that did it, that inspired. But then you said wine, that you were drinking wine on Christmas. What was the wine that you were drinking?
It had to be Malbec.
Okay.
Yep, that's our thing. We like a full body Malbec.
Like full body Malbec.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, what do you think, Matt? Like in drinking this, the original tones that I got like off nose, and like the instant I put it in my mouth, I actually was leaning more towards Scotch for a second.
That's funny that you mentioned that. And by the way, very slickly bringing it back to the whiskey. I like that. I actually thought when I smelled it, because as I've revealed before, I'm a real big fan of Irish single malts, which always have like a lighter, smoother kind of profile. And when I smelled it, it reminded me of Irish whiskey. So yeah, that's what I was thinking, and that made me think. And then I looked down, and it says wheat, but is it a large percent? Because wheat typically makes a bourbon lighter and more floral. Is there a good amount of wheat, or is it really minimal?
I'd say within this that you're looking at about 20% wheat.
Okay, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, and I would say the bourbon where it was aged is significantly impacting the flavor on this. So the wheated, for example, spent the majority of its life in Colorado.
Okay.
Higher altitude. And so it didn't have those harsh summers like we have in the Southeast. So interacting with those harsh tannins of the wood deep in that oak, it's not experiencing that. So that's what you're getting, I think, those lighter and also those light chocolate notes. If you pick up on any of those, that's coming from the wheat. That's the wheat talking.
Yeah. That's, the famous Colorado bourbon is Stranahan's. Stranahan's, right?
Stranahan's.
Yeah. We don't get much of that here, unfortunately. But so, okay, back to the story for a sec. So 2017, January, you get a little bit of a crash course in moonshine whiskey making, and then you come back and you're like, all right, we're doing it. And so what's the first move? Do you start procuring whiskey at that point, or?
No, I started looking for real estate. And
that's where the MBA and the intellect comes in.
Yeah.
Well, it was
because I would have been like, oh, I got to find bourbon. I got to be bourbon.
This is why our wives would be like raise an eyebrow if we said we want to do this, because they know that we have these cockamamie ideas, and then we don't know step 1 through 8. We just know step 9 and 10.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like cool.
Both Felicia and Sarah right now are going. Yeah, they're shaking their heads.
And every other wife too, except for all those Harvard grads. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it wasn't an easy road by any means. I mean, I started looking for the right location. We're in Raleigh. There was no right location. I had a specific vision about what I wanted to do. In that, again, I fell in love with bourbon first. So I'd been to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, where I've been to Maker's Mark and the Buffalo Traces of the world, and you go there and you have this experience, right? And I wanted to be able to bring that here locally, but I didn't want to be in the middle of nowhere or where you have to take a vacation day.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to have a location where you could drive home on your way, on the way home from work, or have a date night, and offer these immersive type bourbon experiences locally. And so as I started looking for locations around Raleigh, they wanted to put me in an industrial park, or given what I was looking to do, age barrel on site, bourbon barrels on site, that quite frankly freaks a lot of inspectors out and planning departments out, because you can look at it a couple of different ways. One is it's highly flammable liquid that could be a bomb, or you could look at it as, all right, it's just happened to be liquid in an oak container. So a lot of false starts around Raleigh. Couldn't find the right location. Spent over 2 years finding wrong locations, started looking around the burbs. And also during that process, I was getting rejected left and right for loans, SBA loans. So rejected 11 times before I heard a yes. And
just because nobody wanted to give a distillery, quote unquote, a loan.
That, and the fact that you talk about all these accolades that I have. The interesting part about that is none of those accolades mean absolutely anything for
a small business.
I would have been more qualified to get an SBA loan had I spent 3 years mopping floors in the bathroom of Jim Beam.
Right.
Yeah.
And then applied for that loan, probably would have got approved relative to what I'd done in the past. It was completely irrelevant. It was frustrating for me, to say the least. But also what I learned in that process was just it made me hungrier and just not accepting no. Let's figure out, all right, I got another rejection. What's next?
Yeah.
What's next? And so that happened, right?
When I was wasting my time as trying to be an actor in my 20s, they used to tell me, which I thought was nice, is every no is one more step to a yes.
That's it. You got to keep moving forward, right?
Anyway, so you found this spot though in a unique place for a distillery.
Out of nowhere, yeah. So I was 2 years in, every day looking at real estate on these commercial sites. And I just happened to find in Zebulon, North Carolina, a building on a residential real estate site. And none of it made sense to me. I'd never heard of this website. I hadn't been to Zebulon since a Mudcats game in college.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But the size of the building caught my attention. I Google mapped the address, and I went, okay, here's 64. You take a right. There's this suburb. Main Street's right there. You don't got to meander to find it. And let me go give it a look. So went out there, saw the space. It was an old department store with those storefronts. Remember back in the day, you used to have like the mannequins that were like staged out front. Yeah, so that's what was all, envision that all over the front. And so I immediately went to the town because I'd had enough false starts in Raleigh and some of the other towns. And to see, well, are you going to be pro-business, one? And then two, do you want me here? And so I went to the chamber first. They spent 2 hours with me. I walked in unexpected, and they literally walked me over to the planning department where they had a team waiting for me and said, hey, at the end of the day, if you want to be here, we'll give you every resource that you need to try to get you up and running. We'd like for you to help us revitalize downtown, and rest is history. So,
That's a great, I'm learning about all this stuff now as we're like plotting our places of where we're going to put Craftons. And it is very cool to see these smaller towns all over North Carolina really embracing the future and development. And, maybe every place is that way or not, but I mean, it's really encouraging when you do get support from the city, from the town that's like, yeah, like, will you help us become a place where other people will want to go? It is foolish to not support new business to come into a place, unless I guess that business is... Well, I don't know. Maybe your grandmother would be, if she was on board, she'd be like,
if she was on that
distillery out of here. We don't need you and your heathens running this town.
I think I might win her over. So I was mindful about that as we got up and running in Zebulon. It's a traditionally a bit more conservative, right there, and being thoughtful of that as I started to make an impact in the community. Our tasting room is one to where we offer non-alcoholic drinks, mocktails. For example, my wife, 3 kids. So it sucked for her for 3 years to go into a bar. I'm having a bourbon and she has a water or a Diet Coke. So we've got fun mocktails where you can come in and still feel included, not have to feel like you need to have a drink. I made a point to tell the community that. We're trying to reconnect the community back to downtown. How do I do that? It's not trying to sell everybody a bottle of bourbon. It's to create a nice atmosphere and experience for you to come down and they know, all right, well, I can have a non-alcoholic drink. Thursday through Sundays, more than likely, Old Raleigh's going to have a food truck downtown. Mm-hmm. And it's great to have a different food option around here as opposed to having to go to Raleigh. Mm-hmm. We have music acts predominantly on Friday and Saturday night. So we want something, keep the local community, if they're looking for something to do, I want them to think, let's go check out Old Raleigh. They tend to have something going on.
Yeah. Brandon, what you're saying reminds me of something. You're talking about having great food, great drink, live music, and we thought the same thing. So on June 26th, we're doing this thing called Bubbles and Brisket.
Hallelujah. There it is. Yeah. Bubbles and Brisket at V Pizza in Cary. Is going to be a great assortment. You might not even know about this yet, Brandon. We're telling you right now. But Matt and I have been discussing this with various pitmasters on the podcast for the last, year, I'd say.
Yeah.
And we all love brisket. And, of course, barbecue in this state is a verb and a noun. It's pulled pork, and that's what you do. But we've realized that so many pitmasters out there are throwing down some of the best brisket. And Matt and I, not coming from this state, have always kind of grown up when you think of barbecue, brisket's like a big deal.
Yeah.
And so now brisket is so ubiquitous within all of these new barbecue joints that it would be like, oh, how fun would it be to just try all of them kind of side by side? It's just been a thought we've been having for a while. Well, now that thought has come to fruition. And thanks to our buddy James Johnson, who basically said, bro, do this. You've been talking about it. Make it happen now. So James is now a part of it, along with about 7 other pitmasters. So James Johnson of Skippers out in Apex, he's going to be there. Kyle Sutton, who's you'll know him from Bestow Baked Goods, but he's also a champion pitmaster on his own right. We have Mark Russell of Longleaf Swine coming in, Carrie Schleifer of Crook's Corner and Alley 26.
Who's going to do a different take on brisket, a little bit more of a braised brisket.
Your grandma's style.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My grandma's style.
And then Boricua Soul is going to come out there. They're making their own brisket.
Some brisket tacos, I believe, right?
Yeah, brisket tacos. Anthony of V Pizza himself is going to throw down a brisket pizza.
Yeah.
And all of these all of these briskets are also accompanied with a great side dish that everybody's putting together. So it's delicious. So that's the food.
And not only that, but thanks to the butcher's market and Derek Wilkins, Derek Wilkins over there, but they're providing all the brisket, and Derek's going to do a brisket that is representative of what the butcher's market can give you for an option.
So that's the food.
Yeah.
And then on the wine side, the bubbles side, that's where you kind of stepped in, Matt, and you with your friends. What do you bring?
Now you like Malbec. I believe there will be some sparkling Malbec there. I have to talk with wine sellers because they might have some from Zuccardi and Santa Julia, but there's going to be 18 different sparkling wines there, some champagne, and from all around the world from our friends at Winebow, and Max Cast, Master Sommelier from Broadbent Selections, is going to be there. Deb Lewis from Vintage 59 is sending her wares. Kevin Owings from Wine Cellars is sending their wares. It's going to be, and Trying a Wine Company is helping support all of that and getting sips to lips there. So
yeah,
it's going to be delicious.
And so with support not only from Butcher's Market and Trying a Wine Company, but Raleigh Magazine as well, and Bestow Baked Goods throwing down desserts as well. We have a great team of people putting together. We included some live musicians. George Hodge and Tom Anderson are both going to perform. So it's going to be a great afternoon from 2 to 6 in Cary at V Pizza. Join us. You can get tickets on our website, ncfbpodcast.com/events, or just look at any of the show notes or on our Instagram. It's everywhere. You can find it if you're looking for it. We'd love to see you. It's going to be a fun time. Get your tickets now because tickets have been selling really fast. I'm excited because it's like 6 weeks away, 5 weeks away probably now when this is out, but or 3 weeks away. I don't know, whenever this comes out.
But also, if you're still a little bit leery of the whole, it's going to be outside.
Yeah, it's outside. We'll have it won't be fully tented, but we'll have like the pit masters will be under a tent. There's some shade. It's got a beautiful shady oak tree right in front, so it's not completely out in the middle of nothing. It's a beautiful area, and bring your friends. It'd be fun. Anyhow, moving on.
I'm hungry now. You're moving on.
I know.
Oh, brisket. Yeah. Well, yeah. We should get a brisket sponsor to just come in and just bring us brisket every episode.
Every time we talk about that, I want some.
Yeah.
Can I come back and visit for that?
Yes.
Well, more importantly, I want to get my greedy little hands on a full bottle of Old Raleigh Distillery. So I knew that the first time you were still kind of going through the process, and I get it, like there's probably permitting and all of that, and so that wasn't underway. But now your whiskey is available.
Yeah, April 24th, our first batch released. 1,420 bottles. I'm targeting 1,500 bottles per small batch, so yield a little less because we had a higher angel share loss in some of the barrels. But we actually sold out last week. So,
and are you selling them both at the distillery and at ABC stores?
The first batch actually completely sold out at the distillery.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah, do it on your own.
Yeah.
We're trying. But the second batch rolls out June 5th, and we'll have a big distillery celebration with that. We've got the Raleigh Pipes and Drums coming out, kick it off, bagpipes, wake up the town, and then we've got bands planned all day. We've got a pop-up market planned, all things bourbon in the market space, and then we've got the tasting room where you can sample the bourbon, purchase a bottle, and just enjoy yourself.
Yeah. And so the whiskey that you're releasing now, they're different whiskeys that you've procured and you're blending them together, but you're also working on a project where you're distilling at the same time, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even when our distilled product is released, I'll continue to showcase this blended product because, again, I'm a whiskey blender first. And it allows me to give and you all might appreciate this. We're in a very affluent whiskey bourbon community. North Carolina is. We're so close to Kentucky.
Yeah.
But for me, I wanted to introduce something to this community where not only are we doing small batch bourbon blends, but I do one-off limited releases where maybe I crank out 200 to 500 bottles. And if I'm just satisfying this local consumer base, I'm completely happy with that. So it allows me to rattle off more different projects, unique projects, to continue to grow in my art form, but also create something special for this local area. I think there's a lot to be said today about being a destination brand, as opposed to want to do the inverse and let's see how quickly we can scale and be a national brand and try to sell to a larger organization. That's just, I'm at a different point in my life. I don't need all that.
Right. And how do you procure the whiskeys that you're blending? Are you going on tours? Is this relationships?
Relationships.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of it is relationships. It's networking, and you're trying. It's a delicate balance, right? So it does me no good if I can buy 10 barrels today, and then all of a sudden y'all like the product, right? Well, Brandon, where's that second batch?
Yeah.
Well, you want to grow next year. Well, next year I need 20 barrels. Well, if I can't go back to the well and get 20 barrels, now I've got a brand that's not scalable or sustainable. So it is a little bit of a balance there. And with the bourbon market like it is, it's kind of ebb and flows. But yeah,
But to dig deep into that blending process for you, so like you have, it's a North Carolina, Wyoming, Colorado, Tennessee, Indiana. Do you know, going offhand, okay, I know this distillery in Indiana is giving me this profile, so I need 5 barrels of that, and then I'll take 10 of the Wyoming, and I'll take 4 of the Tennessee? Or is it just, are they sending you samples on a somewhat regular basis that you're then tasting and kind of have a picture of what that final blend is going to be?
Yeah, took samples initially, and what you see there, the 5 different states, those are where they were aged at. So they were distilled in 3 total states. And so I take samples, and then from there, I bring in the barrels. But one thing to note about bourbon in general, and one of the beauties about bourbon and how it's aged, is, let's say this time of year, it's warmer. So the bourbon is expanding into the wood.
Yep.
And then, so that is last year before the bourbons came on site, that when I sampled the bourbon, that was the flavor profile of it.
Yeah.
I brought it on site. It was January, dead of winter, so that bourbon had contracted again. It had evolved a little bit.
Yeah.
So
concentrates those flavors. Yeah.
So then it was, okay, well, I've got, this is what it was, this is what it is, and oh, by the way, now I have to scale it from a small batch to, we do 300-gallon small batches.
Yeah.
And so that does take time. It took me about 3 months to fine-tune that. And also, we don't just dump barrels. So when I'm talking about showcasing the art of the blend here, we're talking about, there's other blending techniques you can incorporate into what we're doing. For example, if you're into wine or unfortified spirits, we're talking about like brandy aging techniques and things like, it was like fortified wine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Misspoke. So I'm incorporating some of those blending techniques, nuances, to really develop that batch to exactly how I want it to be. But also, as I mentioned, that as we go from batch to batch, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, knowing that the bourbon continues to evolve, right? So our batch is going to evolve, meaning that if you have one of these larger labels, what they pitch is consistency, right? So batch over batch, you want to know if I have batch 1 to 3, wherever, consistency. Well, that trail's already been blazed. What we do, our small batch, is I have 0 carryover from the first batch to the second. It's the same bourbon predominantly, but there's going to be some nuances to the differences in the flavor. And I want to be able to explain those to you, because there's a lot about the art of bourbon in general that I think the broad consumer base doesn't know about. And that's the part where I really want to dive into. And if you have an appetite for that, feed that hunger.
So, for example, on this one, I guess this is going to be your like signature go-to blended, your Old Raleigh bourbon.
Yeah.
Are you ever, because I guess technically, based on your stats here, you could put a 4-year age statement, because it looks like the youngest barrel in here is 4 years. But are you, from what you're saying, it doesn't sound like you're ever interested in putting an age statement on the bourbon.
If I had to, it'd be 4. Now, granted, you don't have to put an age statement on any bourbon that's 4 years or older. But if you do, it's, and this is for the general audience, it's the youngest bourbon in the blend.
Right.
So our next batch, which I just pulled together, it's a 4, a 5, a 9, and a 17-year. So in the 4, almost, it was like 1 week short of being 5. But I got to plug 4. So, no, I don't intend on doing an age statement. We will have some limited release, like single barrels or mixing, or maybe 2 or 3 barrels, where if it fits, I'll do that. for example, I've got the 17-year in this blend. I do want to showcase a limited release 17-year where you can buy the bottle exclusively in North Carolina, or you can come to the distillery, have a unique tour and experience with that, and walk out with a bottle. That's something I'd like to get involved with. Working on that right now.
So as like the business part of you're going to have this blended bourbon whiskey year after year or release after release, and then have other projects with like specialized barrels that are going to be limited, etc.
Exactly.
Like an NCF and bourbon.
Like an NCF and bourbon. What age statement should that be for our? Maybe that's our 5-year anniversary.
Our 5-year anniversary.
Can you find us an awesome 5-year barrel that will make for the NCF and bourbon?
I think I can put that together. May have a couple in my back barrel room right now.
You know what, Max? When we say things on the podcast now, we have to do them.
Yeah. Everybody, our 5-year anniversary of doing this podcast is December 1st of this year, 2021. So we got to get working on it.
Yeah.
I've already been thinking, I'm like, what are we going to do? Well, whatever we do, it's going to be cool. I have a question about, okay, you're getting these whiskeys from multiple states all across our union. And just in general, I know that the difference of resting a barrel on the ground as opposed to 30 feet up in the air on the shoulders of many other barrels is significant in its just aging process. What is the delivery process of getting this product from all these states? What does that do to the whiskey? It has to do something. And how do you receive it? And do you compensate for that?
Yes. So to begin with, if I wanted a barrel, let's just throw out a state, Idaho. Mm-hmm. I'd have to connect with the federal arm that oversees alcohol and tobacco, is TTB, apply to receive and have approved a transfer and bond permit. And then from there, I connect with that other distillery, and we work out the logistics getting the barrels here. Now, the interesting part about this market, in particular with bourbon, is we talk, or I don't know if we've touched too much on the angel share, but there's evaporation loss in these barrels. You just never know how much could show up, because generally you're going to buy these barrels unseen, and you take it as is. Mm-hmm. So it could, in theory, be empty, and you're out a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
So,
and if the driver of the truck's name is Angel,
he's taking a big share.
He's like right in there. He's like,
it's Angel share.
It's Angel share.
Oh, there's nothing better than a logistics driver pulling up, and then they lift up the truck and they realize what it is they have.
Oh, yeah.
Because then I pull it off, and they're just like, what in the hell? Like, I've got 20 barrels of bourbon sitting in
all
the
this
back.
bourbon this whole time.
And what beats that is going down Main Street of Zebulon with your forklift and barrels, and people just driving by, and they're like, can I get some of that?
Yeah.
Like, what?
But so does it do anything? I mean, I imagine it does something to the flavor profile just in the travel. I mean, the reason I bring this up is because I know, let's take, like, say, Biltmore is a, they have their own wine label here, and they grow some estate fruit, but they also purchase, like, California fruit, and it comes over. But bringing fruit from California through the summer, let's say, through the desert, through Arizona, New Mexico, is not an easy task, even in a refrigerated truck. I mean, you can alter it, and then just the shaking of the barrel and all that really kind of messes with it. So do you not touch them for a long time intentionally before you even start blending, or does that matter?
No. I mean, we're barrel versus grapes, right? Raw produce. This is in a stored container. If anything, it agitates the barrels, means it moves it around, swishes the liquid up. But once and that transport is a 1 to 3 day process, let's say. So I sit them back down where they're going to evolve the most, and in particular, with our blend, the West Coast or the Western bourbon is that it spent all of its life, majority of its life in Colorado. So higher altitude, not extreme summers, and now it's here. So I'm really intrigued to see in our future batches how that bourbon evolves and really interacts with these other bourbons. And that's the beauty about creating something a blend that hasn't been done before, is we just don't know. And I like to create the blend, but also I think it'd be interesting to, all right, what are those differences? And be able, as you walk in, did you enjoy batch 2? All right, well, this is batch 3. I dumped these barrels. The average temperature was about 15 degrees hotter in this rickhouse area than it was before. This is how it impacts the blend. And that's the direction we're going with our blend here.
Let's talk about this bottle. This bottle shape. The bottle itself, it's beautiful. We'll put a picture up on our site to talk about it at some point. But it's not your typical. I mean, it almost looks like your teetotaling grandma's perfume that she might have.
Not my grandmother.
What's that?
I said, not my grandmother.
Not your grandmother's perfume. Yeah, but it's got this like sexy long gooseneck, if you will, with like softer shoulders. But
it's a decanter look.
Yeah, old. Yeah. It's very old school. Like it looks like it was fabricated in 1925 or so.
Can I guess that your inspiration bourbon, and this is a guess, Old Raleigh, heavily wheated bourbon in this type of bottle, maybe Old Fitz?
Coincidental, but that's the number one. When somebody asks, hey, what was the inspiration? Everybody mentions Old Fitz. Or
see here, I thought it was unique, but no.
Well, interesting enough, or Old Forester, the birthday bourbon. They're both very elegant glasses. I did want a bottle that did perhaps could be used as a decanter. So I've gone through hundreds of bottles over the years, and I just thought it was what a waste. And I'd love to create something to where you might think twice about wanting to reuse it, but also the greater Raleigh area, bigger long-term goal would be, let's say 3 to 5 years down the road, people come to Raleigh, what's one or two things you got to get on your way out of here? And if you like alcohol, go grab an Old Raleigh bottle. It's got the name all over it. It's got a lot of details to it. It's got the icon on the bottom. There's a lot of thought went into that bottle.
This is a premium whiskey in a sense that you don't need to make this capable because like we talked with Melissa and Lee over at Durham Distillery when they got their bottles, and they're like, these are big bottles. They're kind of chunky, kind of heavy, conniption gin. They're not necessarily made to fit for speed in a speed well, but at the same time, you're probably not both. Durham Distillery's conniption and Old Raleigh is not going to be like your well whiskey per se. I know Melissa's rolling her eyes. She's like, and why not? But I'm just saying, like, barrier to entry because these are premium, kind of higher end stuff. So, like, this is something that's going to sit proudly on your back bar, I would assume, at a nice bar.
Yes. that would be the goal. And as my bartenders have pointed out to me, it doesn't fit in the speed well. So
what is the cost, by the way?
$79.95.
Okay,
$79.95 for a bottle of the whiskey. Yeah. So you're in that premium category, but that's kind of nice. Like you're like, we're going to make really good whiskey out of this state. Like we started here. We're gonna go high level, which I applaud because I think a lot of people are just trying to hit that, like, how do we get
in the well and get in every cocktail?
Yeah,
and
move.
And no, thank you. That's what you have, and I don't mean this negatively, but that's what Kentucky and Tennessee whiskeys are for, meaning that they can crank out tens of thousands of barrels a day.
Yeah.
I can't do that. So why try to be that?
Right.
That's there.
Yeah.
Take that.
In 5-10 years where you're moving more units than you've ever realized and you now have a bigger distillery and you're expanding, then maybe you do a separate label that would fit that bill. But that comes later.
Maybe at that time, there's this really unique North Carolina distillery that came out of nowhere 5 years ago, and you need to go check it out because it's knocking your socks off.
Yeah.
That's where I'd like to go.
This is a man with a plan. He's thought about that.
What's this at the end of your website? It says other spirits. It says Old Raleigh is creating a line of small batch vodka and gin known as Century Club. The line uses the same thoughtful attention to detail as our whiskeys and will be house-made and available in our tasting room. So what's going on there?
So next up will be our vodka. And so I'm actually meeting with some contractors right after this to try to get our steam lines connected, get these stills online, and our next Spirit 2 rollout will be our vodka. It's called the Century Club because there are 100 counties in North Carolina, although I think about 4 of them are dry. But our vision for that product line is we just want to be exclusive to the drinkers of alcohol in North Carolina, have it be a destination type brand. I believe last I'd heard about 40% of all alcohol consumers that consume spirits consume vodka. So we want to tap into that base. We sell quite a bit of vodka at our tasting room right now. And so I want to make that in-house and be able to offer that to our patrons.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm sold.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I just you had me at real estate because I think that it just goes. I had this conversation yesterday with a prominent Durham restaurateur and chef and his GM, and just talking about where the restaurant industry is going and how restaurants over the last 15 years have just been propagated by commercial real estate people trying to get you in their space. But what you're doing, especially with Crafton and stuff, is owning the real estate first, because nobody can ever screw with you there. It makes such a smart difference in business.
That's why a guy like me who didn't go to Harvard just hooked up with a smart guy in Kip and said, all right, you've got the plan and the vision for all this. Let me work the details inside. And so I think that's a good way to go. I mean, it is. When you own your own land and you're kind of running your own business, then you dictate what happens next.
Yeah.
As opposed to, the landlord going up, guess what?
Right.
Prices are going up.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
but and then at the end of the day, the product is delicious. Seriously, and I'm not just saying that to blow smoke. Like that I want a bottle. That I would go buy a bottle. I'm going to take the rest of this little sample home and enjoy it very much. Yeah, that's delicious.
And I already know. I don't have to. This is not a conversation that Kip and I are going to have. There's going to be some old Raleigh distilling on the back bar over at some Craftons, because this is delicious. This is, if you're a bourbon lover, whiskey lover, this is worth your time. Like it's interesting, it's fun, and the story is cool too. So like all of it, it's worth your time. And this is a great gift. Hey, give it Father's Day, right? That's coming up. What dad wouldn't want this?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Love the plug. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. Before you get out of here, though, because we love alcohol so much and we love all the different ways alcohol can be procured, bet you never thought you'd be squeezing it into a pint of ice cream. Well, now we have done that. We, the collective we, me, Matt, and Jennifer Randall of Proof Alcohol Ice Cream, sat in a room, we figured it all out, and then she just did it.
We got our science books out and our protractors and our calculators and figured out the formula.
Yeah, and then we left the room, and then Jennifer Randall did exactly everything on her own with her company and her team. We're talking about Proof Alcohol Ice Cream. We had nothing to do with it, folks, except for talking about it on the podcast. And now Proof Alcohol Ice Cream is everywhere, at least in 7 states. You can get it at the aforementioned Triangle Wine Company. You can get it at Harris Teeter, at Lowe's, at Total Wine. Not at any of your grandmother's houses. Definitely not Brandon's. But you can get it in that branded red freezer that would be in the beer and wine location of any of those aforementioned places. And go to Proof Alcohol Ice Cream. Think differently about dessert. Brandon, you're going home with a swanky little NCF&B hat, some Joe Van Gogh coffee. You got a sticker in front of you. Leave that coffee mug. That's ours. And you're getting some Proof Alcohol Ice Cream to go with you. You've kind of made out today.
I had no idea it was Christmas morning. This is fantastic.
There you go. Well, Brandon, this has been great. I encourage everybody, get out to Zebulon. Go check out Old Raleigh Distillery, and you will drink extremely merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.